and welcome to my greenhouse. I have yet to film a proper tour of the greenhouse, but for today I'm going to be talking a little bit about root rot. I don't know if you guys know, maybe you have, I did film a root rot video and it wasn't able to export for some reason. It was having a lot of issues uploading and I was never actually able to upload it and talk about the topic at all. And I got this gorgeous orchid today from Sharples. It's got a big long dead stick, so we're going to take care of this. We're going to remove all the dead roots, but just look how beautiful this color is. It is the most, I want to bring it closer, but there's this big stick in the way, but it is the most gorgeous, like pearlescent, pretty, peachy, yellowy, pinky, like just gorgeous orchid I've ever seen. And I really liked it, so I thought, well, I want to save it, and I should have tried to get a discount on it just because of how bad the root situation was. However, the fact that the plant is blooming is really good, so that tells me it's probably not too bad. I could just tell from a couple of these roots that it was just not good. And then we have this yellowing leaf here, which is the bottom, so the oldest leaf, so not too much to worry about. In all, the plant is in pretty good shape, so I'm really excited about that. And then secondly, what we're going to do is repot this philodendron mame. This is one that I got in a trade a little while ago. It had another leaf. You probably watched me pot this up actually, and it wasn't liking going directly into soil. So I put it in water, and now it has grown all these roots. This is a rotted growth point, yes. So I'm going to go over with you guys what root rot really is, what it looks like. Hopefully the orchid will be finally a really good example of it, because when I first filmed it, I actually had an example of it. Then of course, when I tried to refilm it, I didn't have any plants with root rot. So this is going to be a really great example of what we're going to do. So the mame is going to go into pon, and it's going to go into a little bit of leca and then pon, or maybe all leca. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to put this grow pot in this adorable little pot that I have, and the mame is going to go in there, and I'm going to cut it shorter. I do love pon, I do like it, but I'm personally not going to spend all the money on the resources to make pon. Sorry about all the squeaking. This is just the I guess the repercussions of having a cheap metal frame structure and it being a windy day, so I apologize for that. But anyway, hopefully my talking is a little bit louder than that. But yeah, so I do like pon, however I find it's really heavy and it's really expensive, so I'd personally really like to use at least a bit of leca, and then we'll see about using some pon. But I think I want to leave pon for some smaller plants. Okay, this is Blueberry Watermelon Wisdom Fruitopia, and if you're joining me with a drink, then cheers! I'm just using this because this terracotta pot doesn't have a drainage hole, so I'm going to be planting it directly into that pot. And I'm going to be using orchid bark, which I have right here. But it is just orchid mix from Pro Mix. It has sphagnum moss, fir bark, perlite. It has everything that your orchids need. First of all, let's take apart this orchid and see what's going on. So we have our orchid here. I'm just going to gently pull it out of the pot. Gosh, that sound's going to be annoying. I'm really sorry. Okay, so first you can see, because this is a root rot video, let me just explain what root rot is. Root rot is overwatering your plants, or just having your roots of your plants just basically sit in water to the point where they don't have enough oxygen to survive. So oftentimes people can even overwater their plants by underwatering them and then suddenly giving them too much water. That will rot your plants. They're going to shrivel up, and then they're not going to be able to take in any water. So root rot itself means that the plant is not going to be able to take in any water or nutrients. When it can't do that, the plant generally suffers, and sometimes you can't tell that a plant is suffering until it's too late. So that's why it's really good to check for signs of root rot if you can. I don't know if I actually have a video posted that does talk about it, but some things to look for are wrinkly leaves, yellowing, drooping leaves, leaves that are just falling off. Also signs of drought, because your plant can't take up water, so it will actually dry out even though you're watering your plant too much. So look for signs of drought, like crispy leaves, anything like that, just like droopy. Yellowing is the really big problem. So what you can see on here is, when I bring this closer, you can see like this here, it's brown, it's deflated, it just comes right off. And what you have left is this stringy little root in the middle, and that is not good. These orchid roots should be big and succulent and firm, and not brown, as you can see. So that is root rot right there. This, if it just comes off like that, that's definitely root rot. So we have pretty bad here. We have it really dry here and crispy, and it's just kind of, you know, not good all the way through. So that is root rot. Root rot is tough because oftentimes you have to get rid of a lot of your plant when you get root rot. It's very detrimental to the health of your plant, and oftentimes you end up losing that plant, unfortunately. So root rot can be a horrible thing. We've all probably experienced it from time to time, and if you haven't, you're guaranteed to experience it at least once in your plant journey, wherever you may be there. So hopefully this will help you figure out what you need to do to take care of it. So first, I'm actually going to take these clips off because I'm going to cut down that spike because it's done flowering. And as, I don't know if you know, Phalaenopsis do not flower out of the same spike twice. Excuse me. They do not flower more than once out of the same spike. So these I'm just going to put down, and I'm just going to chop this spike down to the bottom because we don't need that one. It's already put out this beautiful spike, so we don't need this one anymore. And I'm also going to chop off that yellow leaf, just because, I mean, I suppose you could leave it. I personally don't like to, because I like the plant to put more energy into growing new flowers and new, especially like if it's going to flower like this, I want all that energy to go into the blooms and make that plant really beautiful and really work on new growth rather than trying to save that leaf, because if it started to yellow to that point, it's not going to return and it doesn't look good on your plant anyway. So you can leave it if you want. If it's a plant where it only has one leaf and that's its only way of getting energy, then I leave it. But if it has tons of other beautiful leaves like this plant does, then I cut it off. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just removing the moss from the middle. Generally when orchids come from stores, like sometimes you can get these at just, you know, your grocery store and things like that. They're usually, the roots are wrapped around kind of a bit of moss, and then they're kind of just stuck in the cup there, and they find their way to the edges. So right now I'm just kind of pulling through, try to get most of the moss out of the way, and we're gonna get it into a medium that's not gonna hold as much moisture. Orchids like to be pretty dry. They have really succulent roots that hold a lot of water. Their leaves are really succulent. Their stems are succulent. They do not like wet feet, and oftentimes, especially grocery stores and things like that, do not care for their orchids properly, and unfortunately they often get root rot. It's very common. It's, you know, almost every orchid I've bought has had some sort of root rot. I don't have many orchids, but that, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's more so when you go to the grocery store and you look at the roots, they don't look the greatest. So you'll be able to see what I mean by root rot more when I finish pulling this off. I'm so sorry about all the beeping. Someone must be doing construction. This is just a not good day to film, but I took my dog to the groomers today, and I went to the store while he was getting his hair cut, and I ended up getting a plant because that's what I do best. So this moss I'm not going to reuse. I usually reuse moss, but When it happens that something has had root rot, sometimes it can have a lot of bacteria or any bugs or something that have gotten into the soil or moss. So I don't feel comfortable using this again, and I'm actually going to just I'm gonna put it in this cup and I'm just gonna throw it right in the garbage. Normally, if you're just propagating plants or something like that, go ahead and use your sphagnum moss again. There's no problem with it, as long as you haven't seen any bugs or anything to be concerned about. And like green growing on top of your perlite or moss or something is nothing to worry about. That's just, you know, oxidization and some algae growing, not anything to be worried about. But if you see, you know, mold or something like that, get that out of there. That is no good. This is like my favorite juice, I have to say. That's my absolute favorite. Okay, so really what I like to do is take my plants and I like to squeeze the roots and I like to see what's living and what's not. Sometimes these yellow roots can be alive, but the green is really what we're looking for. But the problem is if there's a severance up here and the root's fine down here, unfortunately the whole thing has to come off, because those severances in the roots are going to be a big breeding ground for bacteria. So you want to make sure, like look, so up here it's actually rotted, even though it's fine down here. Unfortunately, the whole thing has to be cut off, because the rot that's up here is going to spread all the way down. Any of these marks that have been cut into, that is all going to be a breeding ground for bacteria, and that is how your plant is actually going to die. So not good. So see how there's a break here? I'm just going to clip it above, and as long as the root is green inside, that shows signs of life and you're good to go. You can also scratch it with your fingernail and see if there's growth there. That's another great way to tell if your roots are alive or not. So for this one here, I'm just gonna cut right there. Looks good underneath and we're good to go. So I'm just gonna go around and do that, clipping off anything that I think is brown or dried up. I did this for my boyfriend's mom, and she got an orchid for Christmas from her daughters, so my boyfriend's sisters, and it was doing well at first, and then it wasn't. And a lot of people like don't know how to take care of orchids. It seems like a really easy thing to take care of, but it's really not. So see in there, I don't know if you can see, but that is not, it is rotted. It's not good. You can see the brown. So I just keep cutting back. I cut at one spot, and if the rot continues, I just keep cutting back. So you don't ever cut too much. So my boyfriend's dad was kind of just like, throw it out, it's dead, it's not gonna bloom again, blah, blah, blah. But they will bloom again, so you don't need to throw your orchids out after the first time. I'm sure none of you guys will, but if you ever give someone a gift of an orchid, tell them not to throw it out. It's definitely not dead and it will bloom again, just out of a different spike. And so anyway, it was starting to die, it was not doing well, and I went through and I did this exact process with hers, and it has grown a couple new leaves to this point, and it's been a few months, which is really exciting. And since it already just bloomed, I'm not expecting it to bloom right away, but it was the same kind of phalaenopsis type, and it has like beautiful leaves now. It was actually two planted in one thing. We gave it new moss, some orchid bark, like we did it up, and it has been going really well. And another thing that really helped her take care of it was a moisture meter, because she was able to better tell when to water. So that has helped her tremendously as well. So again, this yellow is a healthy yellow, but if it's a squishy yellow, that is no good. So you want to like take a look at everything, make sure there's no separations in the root that, you know, they've broken or anything, because you just want to get rid of that. It's going to grow back, the roots will grow back, but it's always better to cut more than not enough, because if you don't cut enough roots, then you're going to be right back where you started in absolutely no time. And that time, maybe you won't see the symptoms. So luckily these came in clear orchid pots, so I was able to see the roots and see that they weren't doing well. That root might be okay. This whole thing, it does look kind of brown, but it's not mushy at all. So that's a good sign. And when I cut it, it was okay. So looks like that's okay. They can be greenish brown normally, like it does vary from plant to plant. No other plant that I know of really has that. I think orchids are the only one that really do. But as long as it's firm and when you cut it or scrape it, you see green signs of life, then you're usually good to go. So you can see we've removed all of these dead, dying pieces, and then everything we have left is pretty decent, good roots. I'm gonna go spray this off just to wash it down, and then I'll make sure that we have absolutely everything, and then I will be back and we can pot this thing up. So when I spray the roots down, really it's just making sure that any bacteria that was there is now gone, and it's just gonna ensure that the plant is gonna go into a brand new environment where it's not going to recreate that, because a lot of plants can actually get root rot just from bacteria. Oh my gosh, I love this juice. So here we are. I'm just gonna leave this in there because it's already in there so good, and at least then I can, you know, pull it out if I have to make sure I didn't overwater it. But so in here we have a really good chunky mix. I've got my Sphagnum Moss. This is a new brand I've never used before. It's called Fafard. I use this brand of soil at the garden center, but I've never used the moss. I'm just gonna take a bit of it because, again, it's gonna be in a mixture with other things as well. And I have my pressure sprayer. And I'm just gonna mist it just to get it moist. So I'm just like mixing in this little container, I guess. Try to mix it up pretty good anyway. Just putting a bit in the bottom here. The difference for orchids than potting normal plants, I usually like to take a ball of the medium that I'm putting them in, and I like to place it around the middle section of the roots. Doesn't have to be too tight or anything like that, but I like to just kind of have it there so that these roots are just going to they're going to be already around something. I'm just gonna push it back in like that. I really like this mixture. This moss feels really nice. Normal sphagnum moss is a lot thicker and kind of like like a rope of some sort, whereas this feels a lot thinner, so I'm hoping this will give more airflow to the plants. And I know you're saying, look, orchids don't like moisture, why are you putting moss in there? So I just want to jump in and say that sphagnum moss is generally used in propagation methods for the ability to hold moisture, but in a mix like this, you're using it for the purpose that it creates air pockets in your soil, which then allow air towards the roots. So it's not used to hold moisture, and given the ability to have that airflow to the roots, it doesn't stay wet for very long, whereas in a propagation box where it's really pressed down hard, it's going to stay moist a lot longer. Turned out really great. So I can, if I want, spike this up, but I kind of like it how it is, just kind of hanging. And if it gets unruly, I will. But I think the main reason I picked this guy up is because I knew that it had potential by putting out this flower spike. Usually when you see a root rot situation, you don't want to buy that plant. But if you're confident that you can take care of it and you've learned what root rot is and how to prevent it and the signs and things like that, then don't be afraid to, get a plant you really like that has root rot. And, you can always ask for a cheaper price if the person isn't aware. And there's this guy. I absolutely love this. This is going to go on my desk. Beautiful. For now, she's going to go on this plant shelf here. All right, last bit of juice. 32 Celsius or 90 Fahrenheit, and honestly, it just feels like I'm on vacation right now. It feels really great. So this is our mame we have, and it did have a growth point, and that actually rotted. Looked like it was coming back for a bit, and then it rotted. I just peeled off the dead thing today. So here we can get another chance to look at the rot that's going on. That part there is rotted at the top. And anything brown and mushy that you see needs to go. This part's actually okay, but I might want to cut this again just to kind of make sure. Again, this was given to me as a unrooted cutting. It was a trade, so it was fully in my park how I was going to get the plant to adapt to its new environment. Put it in soil directly, thinking it was going to be fine, but wasn't happy about it. So this part that's rotted here is the part where the old leaf was, and I'm just gonna try with my scissors to get as close to it without cutting like directly into it, but just kind of try to cut the top layer to kind of get that off there. So now you can see that it's green, all the brown is gone. And I'm just gonna feel around the stem for anything that's mushy or black. And you know, if it just scrapes off like that, great. These are beautiful furry water roots, and it seems like the plant's doing really well in water, so I'm gonna leave it that way. I was gonna bring it back to soil, but I just think that it clearly wants to live that way. I don't want to change it and stress it out again. I don't want to risk losing the poor thing. So I'm gonna try to cut this end a little bit just to see what we have, and I'm only doing that because you can see this brown color is reaching up the stem more, and if it happens to be rot, I don't want it to kill the stem. So as you can see, I cut it and it's clean inside, so whatever it was must have just been rotting on the outside a little bit. Yeah, so it was rotting on the outside. You can see that orangey color, not good. So again, I cut it at the perfect spot and we're good to go. So I actually kind of want to let that callus for a little bit, but I'll show you, this is the auxiliary bud right here. You can see that it's going to start to grow another growth point out of there. So we have a couple nodes down here, which is really great. And we have another auxiliary bud down there. It's always been funny to me whether it's axillary or auxiliary, who knows. But anyway, so this guy, yellowing a little bit on the edges. This was the brand new leaf when I got him. And they are a crawler, so they like to be on top of the soil or substrate. So this is the pot I'm going to use in here. It will fit in there. This has been an extremely long video so far. It's been like a half an hour, which is kind of long. So I'm gonna pour some leca into my strainer, and I'm gonna go outside and just pour some water through it just to get it clean. Okay. I'm gonna try to tilt it like this, and I'm gonna see if that's gonna enable us to have a little bit more room before I'll have to repot this plant again. Push it in there and kind of squish everything. Okay, so it is looking a little lopsided, but I did that on purpose again so that I could try to create a little bit more room for it to grow. And then finally, all we have to do is give it some water that goes about a third the distance up the container. So I'm just gonna pour directly from here because my watering can got some leaves in it and stuff, and I just honestly want the freshest water. Once it has adapted a bit, then I will start to put nutrients in. You can usually do it right away, but I like to just be safe, so I'm just gonna water it like I would a normal plant and kind of wait for the liquid to come almost to the top. I'm filling it more than I normally would now because I want the plant to be able to root better. So I want the roots to actually sense the water. They will start to sense the water and they will go right through. They'll start to grow down. So I'm gonna bring it a little bit higher up so that they can sense water is right there. And then as the water evaporates, I'll only start to fill it a third of the container that's inside this cache pot here. I'm really excited about this because I've wanted to get this potted up for ages. So here she is, the mame herself. She's in this beautiful pot. Maybe I'll put her this way. And then here we have the new growth point, which is awesome. And then you can even see some of the roots. I don't know if, oh, I just poured it everywhere. I'm gonna try to bring the camera closer. So you can see we have the new growth point here, and then you can see some roots growing out the front here. And so it is leaning a bit, but I want it to so that when the stolon continues to grow that way, it has that much longer to grow than it would have if it didn't. And then finally, we have our beautiful orchid that we potted up here, and it is just the most beautiful color ever. I might let these guys sit in the greenhouse to get some nice warmth for a little while, but yeah, I think that is going to be everything for the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate you supporting my channel and everything. It is very new. I'm very new to it, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So thank you for supporting me on my journey. Thank you for watching me repot some plants today and learn a little bit about root rot. I hope you guys learned something. And if you did, let me know. I'd really like to know how I've influenced you guys with information. It's really interesting to see how many people actually like watch my videos and stuff, and I really enjoy it. It's really interesting. So anyway, thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.